All right, so our last practice exercise that we are going to do to help us learn how to shade is to shade a sphere. So now that we have two kind of practices down, we have our value scale and our gradation scale, we are going to practice using those techniques on a sphere. So what you're first gonna need to do is draw a circle. I know that drawing a circle can be a little tough, especially without having something to trace or a tool, but this does not need to be perfect at all. Kind of a hint of what might help you is something that I do is I kind of, before I even start like touching the paper, I kind of just start hovering over my paper in a circle, and that will kind of get some like muscle memory going on to what my circle is going to look like. And then once I kind of feel like I'm getting like a circle shape, then I'm going to put my pencil down maybe a couple times, and then I'm going to decide, okay, that line doesn't need to be there. And just kind of see which lines are the best to make my circle. This one kind of came too far out. And if you can see that it's a little light, I'll darken it up right now so that we can see it in the video a little better. You don't want to make your circle too big. The bigger you make it, the harder it's going to be to shade. So since this might be most of your first practice at this, I would try to make it relatively small. As you can see, this is probably like half the size of my pencil. So you don't want it like an inch, but you don't really want it to take up half of your paper because that's going to make it more difficult. So your first thing that you're going to want to do with a sphere is figure out where your light source is. So what I usually do, I'll usually pick like one of these two corners, and I will draw maybe just a sun, maybe you want to put a star or a dot or kind of whatever kind of just helps you remember that that is your light source. And then I will draw an arrow coming down so I know where that light is coming from. So now you know that if the sun is up here and it is hitting the sphere on this side, that this area right here is going to be your highlight. And you know that if your light source is here, the opposite side of where the light is hitting is going to be your darkest. So our darkest area is going to be kind of down on this side. And it isn't a flat surface, it's rounded, so that's gonna mean we're gonna have to really work on rounding it and not straight back and forth. To kind of explain that better, let me show you really quick kind of like what would happen if I had a circle and I started my darkest here and just started slowly going lighter and lighter this way. That's really not going to give you the appearance that it is round. It still looks pretty flat. So what you are going to do, let me turn my paper a little so it's easier for me to shade, is find that darkest spot, and you're kind of going to go in a curved line. So you can start kind of going around kind of the same shape that the outside of the circle is, and going, following that line. I kind of just get down some color first, and now I know that this needs to be a lot darker. So I'm gonna slowly darken it. I wouldn't worry too much about the pencil marks at first. You're really just trying to figure out where those colors are. And once we get done with this, we can use that blending stump again to kind of help smooth things out a little. So I'm really just putting down color, trying to get it somewhat even, but it's a little hard. So kind of getting that dark color, and now I'm going to slowly, I'm slowly getting my pencil more flat to the paper and holding it differently so that I can get those lighter colors. It's a little awkward for me because I'm kind of my paper in the camera here, but you can kind of turn your paper a little easier to make this whole process a little simpler, but I think you're getting the point here. And then I'm going to slowly lighten the pressure until I get near that highlight. And now before I do anything else, what I might want to do is take that blending stump and just kind of see how those colors are looking if I blend them together. Because right now I have a lot of pencil marks. But if I take this, this is really going to help me smooth that out and make it look more smooth and rounded. I'm going to keep that highlight up here and kind of keep that as white as possible. I might just kind of slowly transition that pencil into there. And now I am slowly starting to see where that light source is coming and my highlight, some of my middle grounds and some of my darkest. We kind of didn't talk about yet, but I sort of started doing is leaving a little bit right on the edge here, which would be a reflection, because we are going to need to add in a shadow. So I kind of think of my light source is here, where is that shadow going to be? And then your shadow is really going to be some of your darkest areas. And it's going to be darkest right under your sphere. And then it's slowly going to lighten up a little as it goes out away from the shadow because of that light source. I'll take my blending stump again and kind of help smooth that out. And this is by no means perfect. We're not trying to make this look perfect at all, but just some practice. If I was really doing this, I would probably spend a little bit more time on it, but for video's sake, I was trying to keep it pretty quick and not get too worried about anything being perfect, but just showing that we have a light source, we have our highlight over here, we have kind of our darkest spot down on the opposite side of the light source, we have a reflection, and we have the cast shadow. And you can kind of see from this one to this one that this one's really starting to look more like it's rounded, and this one looks flat. So those will be our three things that we practice. So we have our value scale from lightest to darkest in boxes, a gradation scale that's going from lightest to darkest gradually with no box transitions. And then we are going to try a sphere at the bottom with the highlight and the shadow. You have your cast shadow and a reflection. You don't have to do this one. That was just kind of my practice just to kind of show you what not to do.